Hi everyone, welcome to the fourth episode of Nostos, Your Journey Back Home. Today we are going straight to the point. Have you ever looked at your life and thought, why does this keep happening to me? Not necessarily the very same situation. Maybe people are different, the relationship is different, the job is different, the city is different, I don't know. But somehow you keep ending up in the same emotional place. You keep feeling rejected. You keep feeling like you're not enough. You keep needing control. You keep needing validation. You keep feeling misunderstood, don't you? You keep having the same kinds of arguments no matter where you are. And eventually you start wondering, is this just who am I? Well, I don't think it is, and this is where I want to introduce one of the central ideas of Gnostics, the core pattern. So what is a core pattern? A core pattern is a recurring psychological loop that influences the way you see yourself, how you interpret other people, and how you respond to situations. And it is not simply a habit, because a habit is something you repeatedly do, right? A core pattern is deeper than that. It influences what you notice, what you expect, what you fear, and how you react. And because it happens so automatically, it can feel like your reality. For example, you don't think like this, my abandonment pattern has been activated. Nobody thinks like that, right? Or you don't think my control pattern is showing up right now. Instead, you think, I need to know what's going on in here. Or another one, you don't think my self-worth is showing up right now. Instead, you may think I'm just not good enough. And that's normal. Nobody thinks about their core patterns or the problems they have every situation. So, the problem is the core patterns are so powerful that you experience them as truth rather than as a pattern. A person asked me, but where do core patterns come from? And I wanted to be very, very careful here, because Nostos doesn't need to say that we are born with a predetermined problem, or that we are destined to experience certain situations. We don't have evidence for that, at least not yet. Instead, think about it this way. We are all born with different temperaments. Some people are naturally more sensitive. Some are more reactive to uncertainty. Some are more cautious. Some are more, I don't know, socially attuned. And then life happens. Our experiences interact with those characteristics. We learn, we adapt, we develop ways of protecting ourselves and getting our needs met. And when those responses are repeated enough, they can become automatic. And that's where we need to be careful. Because eventually, they become part of the way we navigate the world. And eventually, it can also become our identity. And again, a core pattern isn't necessarily something wrong with you. It may have once been useful. It may have helped you feel safe. It may have helped you belong. It may have helped you avoid rejection or feel in control. However, something that was helping you can eventually become something that keeps you stuck. Now, imagine someone who has strong pattern around control. Let's start with control because most people have this one. They need to know what's going on. They don't like uncertainty. Nobody likes uncertainty, right? They have difficulty depending on other people. And they might even say, I'm not controlling, I'm just responsible. And maybe they are, I'm not saying they are not. But then something happens. Someone doesn't answer their message. A plan changes. Someone makes a decision without consulting them. And as a result, their anxiety goes through the roof. Why? Because the event didn't just create an inconvenience, it activated something deeper. If I don't know what's happening, I'm not safe. So they start checking, analyzing, planning, trying to predict, trying to regain control. And they may not even realize that they're doing it. To them, it feels like the logical thing to do, and that's a core pattern. Now, think about self-worth. Imagine someone who's objectively successful. They're intelligent. People admire them. They have compliments. They accomplish things. But internally, deep down, they still feel like they are not enough. Someone can tell them they're beautiful, they are wonderful, but they think something like they're just being nice with me. Or someone praises their work and they still think they don't really mean it. Someone chooses them and they wonder, they overthink. When are they going to change their mind? You see? It's crazy. So they keep looking for evidence outside themselves. More attention, more achievements, more compliments. But somehow the feeling doesn't disappear. And why it doesn't disappear? Because the external world is trying to solve an internal pattern. Does that make sense? So, how do you actually find yours? Your core pattern. One of the easiest places to start is by looking at what triggers you the most. What experiences bring up the strongest emotional reactions in you? Because the intensity of your reaction tells you that you're touching something deeper than the situation itself. Maybe you feel abandoned very easily. Someone becomes distant and all of a sudden you feel rejected, anxious, or afraid that you're going to lose them. Maybe your core pattern has something to do with abandonment, security, or self-worth. Maybe you have a deep fear of being taken advantage of. If you're constantly wondering, what does this person want from me? Are they using me? Can I trust them? Maybe the underlying pattern has something to do with trust or control. Or maybe you constantly feel unseen. You walk into a room and feel like nobody really understands you. So you think, nobody gets me. Maybe there is a pattern around self-expression. Maybe you are not communicating yourself as clearly as you think you are. Or maybe, and this is where it gets really interesting, you are communicating yourself, but you've become attached to the identity of being the person nobody understands. So unconsciously, you like being mysterious. You like feeling different. You like telling people, nobody really gets me. Because a pattern can often become part of your identity, as I said in the beginning. And when that happens, you don't just experience the pattern, we start protecting it. Now, sometimes the pattern hides inside the complaint. For example, a friend of mine who constantly used to complain about her job. She felt like she worked too much. She felt like she wasn't paid fairly. She didn't feel appreciated by her boss. And how many of you guys feel like that too? And every day, there was another story, another frustration conversation, another thing that wasn't fair, another reason why she deserved more. The thing is, maybe she was completely right. Maybe the job really wasn't fair. And that is important because having a real problem doesn't mean you have a core pattern, right? But if the same dynamic keeps repeating, that is when it becomes worth investigating. So anyway, I started thinking and observing, what if the job isn't the issue? What if the job is simply the place where the pattern is showing itself? Maybe the deeper pattern is around recognition. Maybe she has a strong need to feel valued. And when she feels undervalued, it becomes incredibly painful. However, there is another question. And this is the uncomfortable one, but we can't skip this part. I'm so sorry. What does the complaining give her or give you? Because every time she tells someone the story, the same story, people validate her. They say, "You're right. That's completely unfair. You deserve better. I can't believe they're treating you like that." So for a moment, she feels seen. She feels understood. She feels validated. The person who agrees with her also validates her. And then she goes back to the same situation. So maybe without consciously choosing it, the complaint itself has become part of the psychological loop. The problem creates the complaint. The complaint creates validation. The validation temporarily makes her feel seen. Does this math make sense? And then the problem is there in the next day. Again, I'm not saying that she constantly creates problems so that people will validate her. That's not the point. The point is to ask, could the pattern be giving her something that she doesn't know how to get in another way? Maybe recognition, connection, validation. Maybe a feeling that her experiences matters. And that is why core patterns can be so difficult to recognize. It is easy to speculate, but it's hard to recognize them. Sometimes we don't just suffer from our patterns, sometimes they give us something too. So don't just ask what hurts when you're trying to identify your own core pattern. Don't only ask what hurts me. This is so superficial. Also ask, what do I get from repeating this? Maybe your pattern is control. So what does control give you? Safety. Maybe your pattern is constantly seeking validation. So what does validation give you? A temporary feeling of worth? Maybe your pattern is constantly needing to be right. So what does being right give you? Certainty, control, a feeling of competence. Maybe your parent is constantly complaining about being mistreated. So, what might dad give you? Attention, validation, a feeling of being understood. Again, this isn't about blaming yourself. It is about understanding the psychological function of the pattern. Because a pattern usually develops for a reason. It was trying to accomplish something, that's for sure. And that's the point we're here, to try to find out. It may have been trying to protect you. It may have been trying to help you belong, feel safe, and eventually have become automatic. Think about it. So, how do you identify yours? Look for repetition. What triggers me disproportionately? What situations create an emotional reaction that feels much bigger than the event itself? What emotions keep returning? Fear, rejection, loneliness, helplessness? So, do you always feel misunderstood? Or do you push people away when they get too close? Do you need constant reassurance? All these questions, answer them honestly. Now, one of the most revealing questions you should ask yourself: what am I afraid this situation means about me? Because most of the times the event isn't the real trigger. It is what the event means to you. Someone doesn't reply, the event is they didn't reply. Okay? But the meaning might be, I'm not important. They're going to leave. Or I've done something wrong. I can't trust anyone. And that meaning may reveal your core pattern. Look for the pattern across your life. Because one bad relationship doesn't automatically mean you have an abandonment pattern, right? One difficult boss doesn't mean you have a recognition pattern. One financial crisis doesn't mean you have a scarcity pattern. We are looking for repetition across contexts. Thus, the same emotional dynamic appears in your relationships. We're going to talk about relationships in a deeper way. Not today, but that's too much. Friendships, career, family, or the way you relate to yourself. Because when the circumstances change, but the underlying emotional experience remains, that is when we have something worth investigating. Because maybe the people are different, maybe the situations are different, but the internal story is the very same one. And that's your clue. Okay? Another thing, don't try to break it yet. For now, just observe, because it's a lot of information. And I don't want to overwhelm you this week. Look at your life. Look at what triggers you. Look at what you repeatedly fear. Look at what you repeatedly seek. And what you repeatedly complain about. The reactions that feel automatic. And remember, the most important question isn't, why does this keep happening to me? Maybe it is, what what keeps happening inside me when this happens? That's a completely different question. And once you can answer that, you may have found the beginning of your core pattern. All right? I think that's enough for this episode. Don't try to break it yet, because in the next episode, we are going to do exactly that. How to break the core pattern. All right? Thanks a million for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.